Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. The transfer window has slammed shut for January. This is it for the rest of the season. We heard from, you could allege, three wise men at a round table today. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the Newcastle victory. We'll be talking about a huge Manchester City fixture coming up this weekend. And I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And I wanted to ask you this a bit differently than we normally did at the moment. It's not been a harmonious fan base, let's say, David, over the last few weeks, but just maybe in the last week, the round table, the results. I'm not saying it's back to peak by any means, but it seems a bit calmer all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, it just helps when you get a good performance and a good win, and that's what Liverpool got. I think, all the talk about everything, what Arne Slot is saying in press conferences, what's happening in the transfer market, this, that, and the other. It all boils down to, if you get good results, that stuff, and some of it is nonsense, let's be honest, but that it quietens down immediately if you start winning football matches, because that's ultimately, as much as people try to say they care about other stuff, the reality is all they care is about is winning, and winning in a stylish way, hopefully. And Liverpool did that, I think, against Newcastle, and it seemed to have a bit of a transformative effect on the mood around the place and the mood on social media, and kind of, and then of course topping it off with getting not a January signing in of sorts, but getting a signing in. People always like that as well, so it has calmed things down a little bit. And hopefully more good results to come, because that'll make everyone feel a lot better, and I'll have
Fingers
we'll
crossed.
see less arguing online as well, which would be nice.
God, yeah, that would be something. And I mean, going back to this one, I'm looking at the stats there for jogging the memory over Saturday, and there was a lot to like about those, and there was a lot to like about the performance. But we always say football's about sliding door moments. The first half an hour, they were probably the better team, though, weren't they?
Yeah, I would say so. I think the game was absolutely played on their terms in that first half hour, to the point of I'm sitting there thinking, man, this is going to be another negative review incoming, because I think a Newcastle win and another poor Liverpool performance is coming, to be fair. And because Newcastle were just, long balls, direct, counter-attacks, set pieces, and penning Liverpool in really with the physicality. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the League Cup final, where Liverpool never really got going at all, and it was played on Newcastle's terms. So it was a very worrying first half hour, I'd say, particularly with everything that's gone before as well. And I certainly, once it got to that point, and I think it's 36 minutes he scored the goal.
Yeah.
I really did not think that Liverpool were going to go on and play well in that game and win it. That it kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, I thought Newcastle started well, and Liverpool struggled to deal with it. And you were fearing the worst, really, once that Anthony Gordon strike hit the back of the net.
You were, but certain people had a different belief in how things were going to go. And there's probably two people we've got to talk about to start with. I like this from Milos Kerkez. This was one of his interviews for the official site earlier, talking about Ekitike and Wirtz together, saying, brilliant players. I watch them every day in training. It's nothing new for me, but it's enjoyable when people come to the stadium and see these two ballers playing like that. I mean, we've got to talk about these two individually. Hugo Ekitike, 2 on the day. Reminiscent of Torres for you, that second one?
Someone said to me, kind of maybe Michael Owen in the FA Cup final, and I do quite like that comparison as well. I think the way he kind of puts it away is because Torres kind of passes it into the far corner, doesn't he? Whereas this is a bit more of a poke. I know there's been some interesting phrasing online in terms of describing how he finished that one. But yeah, it was really nicely put away. And yeah, just everything about the goal was kind of sheer class. But his performance in general, I just think, two very different goals, but two that really showed the quality that he's got. But then every other aspect of his play as well, in terms of bringing others in, his pressing is getting much better as well. He seems more adapted to that. And I just love his character and everything he brings to the team. Like, he's such a big personality. And you can see that even, like, everybody loves that when, he's giving the Newcastle fans a little bit of stick and stuff. Like, everybody wants a bit of that. I always remember Jacquet after that Leicester game when he's kind of given it, big kicks to the away end because of what they've been chanting. And you think that's what makes you kind of fall in love with these players as supporters, doesn't it? So it was really nice to see that. But he's also, to top that off, an absolutely fantastic footballer. And he showed that again against Newcastle.
He was brilliant in this one. And yeah, you mentioned his chasing down. He wins the ball brilliantly, chasing down Dan Burn. You're expecting that net to burst for the hat-trick, aren't you? That was the only small blot on the copybook in this one.
Yeah, surprised he didn't put it away with the way that he was finishing and has finished generally for Liverpool, really. He just kind of got that one all wrong. But, I mean, you can't really hold it against him when Liverpool win as handsomely as they did. And he's scored 2 and been absolutely brilliant. I think I'm right in saying he's never scored a hat-trick in his career thus far. So, but if he carries on this way, I'm pretty sure it's coming soon enough because he's absolutely unbelievable and very, very good in front of goal as well.
It does seem to really be knitting every element of his game together. It's maybe harsh to compare him to other people or talk about where he is, but we're going to anyway. Apart from Erling Haaland, who I know is a sort of different breed to everyone else, the best striker in the Premier League for you right now?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so in terms of, I know Igor Thiago scored a few more goals for Brentford, hasn't he? But quite a few pens in there. And I just think in terms of his technical level, he's nowhere near Ekitike. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny to think about, isn't it? That's the level we're talking about. And of the 2 strikers Liverpool signed over the summer, would you have picked out Ekitike to be that man and be the man that you're comparing to Haaland this season? Probably not. But it just shows you just how good he has been, and that he's being mentioned in that company. And his aim will be to get up to Haaland's level. He's got all the tools to do it, and it's been a really, really good start. And he is only 23 as well. So another very, very good signing from Liverpool.
Speaking of players who were young and good signings from Liverpool, I actually had Ekitike third best player on the day. I had this man in second. Florian Wirtz with a goal and an assist. Again, though, just the way he did both of those when everything seemed to be going a bit wrong, just thought, sod it, I'm just going to pick it up, dribble past everyone on Newcastle's defender and cross it for Ekitike. He was just making things happen again, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it's exactly what you thought Florian Wirtz would be, that assist. It's just like mass of bodies in the box, a low block, up against a big team who are making it really difficult for you. And he just kind of jinks past the couple, little cut back, and then all of a sudden the ball is in the back of the net, and it's just pure magic. It's exactly, like I say, what we expected him to do and hoped that he would do. Brilliant kind of execution of technique. And it just he's just adding to it now, isn't he? He just really is getting there in terms of where we wanted him to be and what we expected from him and what we knew he was capable of, because he's just adding the goals and the assists every week now, to already just being a brilliant quality player who helps Liverpool progress and just shows little bits of magic in really important parts of the pitch. To get another assist and then to finish his goal brilliantly. He's another one who you think, he's a world-class player at the end of the day. That's why Liverpool paid so much for him, and he can continue to get better as well. So that's really exciting, and he could have such a big impact on the second half of this season now.
You really hope so. And with his impact, it's kind of been noticeable in the last few games. Arne Slot's almost played him at the 10, hasn't he? He's played 2 midfielders in that double pivot, usually Jacquet, Salah wide, Ekitike. Do you think, because people will look at that and go, he's doing, damage galore in the 10, but it does leave us a little bit more open, as we talked about at the start of the season. Do you think we are going to see him in the 10 more than the left now?
Yeah, because I think it was always going to be a gradual process. I think when we talked about wanting to see him on the left-hand side, it was because the team was imbalanced at that point. They had things that they had to work through and work on and make themselves more difficult to beat. But Slot always said, and he was adamant in press conferences, that the long-term plan was for Florian Wirtz to play a lot of games in the 10. And so to kind of see him go back there and be so influential, and Liverpool looked balanced and not open in this game, that first half an hour. But I wouldn't say they were kind of wide open. It was more kind of Newcastle winning second balls rather than anything else. And then from that point onwards, he gave up basically nothing. I mean, 0.1 expected goals against in the second half. So they can be a balanced team with him in there. if they get it right in terms of the selection of what's around them and the relationships being there and all being right. So, and that's a kind of thrilling thought because of the quality he adds in that position, in a central position with runners either side of him, really makes Liverpool dangerous. And he does get through the work as well. That's something you got to say about him, is that he covers a lot of distance and he presses well. So, he's just one of those players I really, really am enjoying watching as well. And he's getting better and better every week.
Really is. Those two are shining at the moment. And he gets an assist from Mo Salah, so that was good. Mo Salah, made a bit of threat, but people will also look at it and go, didn't go past his man really at all, missed a few good chances. What was your assessment of Mo on Saturday?
Yeah, he just kind of, for me, the chance he doesn't put away, the one he kind of toe pokes wide,
Yeah.
for me, it's a consequence really of like just not being quite as quick as he used to be, because Lewis Hall just gets an arm on him in a way that I think 2 years ago nobody would have even been near him to do that, to knock him off balance, to force the finish wide. So I do think he's still quite quick, by the way, and he still outpaced Lewis Hall to get there, but not quick enough to kind of create that full separation like he used to. So that is maybe affecting him a little bit. Now, if that's something he can adapt to over the next few months, I mean, we don't know where things are going with him. I suspect maybe away from Liverpool, but we'll see. We'll see with that. But yeah, it's something he's either going to have to adapt to, or it's going to have a serious impact on him in terms of his output, which is fine, by the way, with the age that he is, if he's not scoring goals as much as he used to. But yeah, I suspect this is the version of Salah that we're going to see for the rest of the season, which is not quite the level that we're used to, but he can still be incredibly useful. Players are still scared of him. And he did set up a goal in a performance that was kind of so-so. And look, he doesn't have to be utterly world-class every week now. He's done enough of that for Liverpool. And the fact is, he only has to be good enough to get them in the top 4 this season, because that is the aim. So hopefully he can be that.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that, because he has been good in a few games recently. And I suppose the player that, for me, despite all the goal scorers, despite all, being 5 goals in this game, which should sound a bit strange, Ibou Konaté in this one, I thought he was absolutely brilliant in terms of, especially his duels with Anthony Gordon, because Gordon seemed to think, I'm not going to go up against Van Dijk, I'll get no joy there, I'll go down Konaté's side, but he didn't really get any change, especially second half. And I mean, the goal, it takes an eternity to go in, but it was the best moment of the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. I thought one of his best performances of the season, to be honest. He's had a lot of stick in it. I kind of wonder, don't you, about whether something that's been going on behind the scenes, and this is why his kind of mind has been a little bit elsewhere, and that's made it difficult for him. So, really nice to see him back and playing as well as he did in really difficult circumstances. So huge credit to him for that. As you say, I thought he was just so dominant in everything he did, and easing the attackers off the ball and coming out with it, showing real composure. And then the goal, he has a chance not long before it, and you kind of think, when it drops to him again, and the way it goes in, you do almost think it's meant to be in those moments, because it was so kind of strange how the goal came about. And huge cheers when everybody realised who put it in the back of the net, and all the players seemed made up, and of course he was in tears. So really emotional moment inside Anfield.
It was good. And there is another player I should mention, because he keeps playing well at the moment, and we've talked how much stick he has. It was a brilliant pass by Milos Kerkez, wasn't it, for that goal as well? He spots it early. The ball boy does a fair bit of work there as well. But shout out to Kerkez for the pass.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? It's so reminiscent. There's a pass that Andy Robertson makes for Ekitike against Frankfurt, if you remember it, when he goes in behind, and Frankfurt are playing a really high line. And the narrative early in the season around Kerkez was like, oh, well, only Robertson could possibly play that pass. You wouldn't get that from Kerkez. And it's like, it was a great pass from Robertson, but Kerkez is clearly capable of playing that pass. He just, he wasn't in his best form at the start of the season, but it was like, oh, he's never going to be good enough to do that or whatever. And it's like, well, he's shown you there now, hasn't he, that he is definitely capable of doing that. I think some of the kind of assessments of him have spoken about this countless times, that the stuff that was said about him at the start of the season was just ridiculous. So obviously he's a very good player. But again, he is now starting to show his best regularly, which is great. And really good for Liverpool and good for him. And yeah, another good performance. And I didn't mention him in my post-match because the fact is those kind of good performances are becoming pretty standard for him now. He is of that level, and he's showing it on a regular basis, which is really, really useful for the manager.
And it's great seeing him square up to 6'5", Dan Burn at the end as well, just for head and measure.
By the way, I tell you what, I dance
yellow.
around going in on referees in this podcast. I don't like talking about it, but I thought I'll give you this one. I thought Simon Hooper had a very poor game, and I thought Dan Burn was very fortunate not to see a card for that, because that was off the pitch, completely unnecessary, just trying to leave one in on an opponent, which I think is really, really poor and unprofessional. So. I thought the ref was poor around that, and I thought Dan Burn was as well.
Yeah, not many you're going to get affection for Simon Hooper, but a 4-1 victory and plenty to celebrate on Saturday. And then off the field, deadline day, we've got plenty to talk about here. And of course, the headline, let's start on the positive stuff. Liverpool agree a deal. It got officially confirmed, didn't it, by the club about 10:30 last night, an old-style embargo time, that Jeremy Jacquet will join for a £60 million deal next summer. This one, Liverpool seem really bullish about this. We've seen the reports that they beat off Chelsea, Bayern Munich were interested, Manchester United made an inquiry. This really does feel like a coup for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, by the sounds of things, they when you speak to people about it, they're very, very kind of pleased to get this one over the line, particularly because, you think about the young central defenders they've missed out on in recent summers, and, Dean Howson and Lenny Yoro as well. So they've kind of, they've been scouting in that market, and we thought, Giovanni Leone is very much one of them, but obviously slightly less expensive. This is more the kind of the big ticket one. And yeah, they've got one over the line and got one over Chelsea, so they're very, very pleased about that. And it's kind of interesting, really, because he's so young and so expensive, and it's not really in keeping with what Liverpool have done down the years. He doesn't have, I wrote about this today, he doesn't have an awful lot of minutes behind him, in terms of making your judgment on him. But they obviously, I think that gives you an indication that, I think there's been a development internally. They've got better at scouting young defenders recently, because, like I said, I just don't think they would have seen that as enough evidence to bring in a 20-year-old for that amount of money previously. But also a reaction a little bit to the kind of what the market is like. So they both think he's special, but they also know that you have to act quicker now, because so many clubs are aware of these young talents at such a young age that the competition is insane now. So it's like, you think about signing Virgil van Dijk at what was he? Would he have been 23, 24, 25 maybe, when he came from Southampton, and he was just instantly the world's best defender when he arrived. I'm not sure that's possible now. I'm not sure a player of that quality would end up at Southampton for very long at all before they would be moved on. I feel like the market, and that is not that long ago, by the way, but I feel like the market's completely changed. Again, Sadio Mane, good example. Mo Salah, they're coming in at like 23, 24 with a decent level of production behind them. And Liverpool are like, why has nobody else noticed how good this player is? Drop him into their team, and it's like, boom, now we're suddenly world class. It's like, I almost feel like it's close to impossible these days to do that, because you have to sign a young centre-half at the age of 20, because the competition is so great now, and you have to pay £60 million for them. So it's a real kind of step change, really, in what the market looks like and how Liverpool have to act. But as I say, I think the evidence they've got and the profile they built up on him, they believe also that they're willing to pay that amount, because he's very, very, very good.
Yeah, the potential seems absolutely huge in this regard. And shout out to the super chat there saying about the roundtable PR, no video clip of Mo, our high EPL scorer. We did praise Mo earlier, Mo Salah, and everything he's done, and we will talk about the roundtable, of course, there at the same time. So that is a positive. We've got to give that from yesterday. But there are still a few questions to ask. And I never thought we'd be speaking about Inter Milan, because Marotta was talking about this, saying, Dumfries, because that was linked to a deal for Curtis Jones. And people were like, is that real? But then also, Fratesi, the Italian player's agent, said, yeah, it was Liverpool, and there was talks around Curtis Jones moving to the Inter Milan. Paul Joyce, also this window, about a few days ago, we talked about this, Spurs being interesting. We talked about there's no smoke without fire, and this keeps getting mentioned. I'm not going to lie. I don't like this, but there is just a concern about Curtis Jones's future realistically now.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. To the point at which you kind of think, I'll almost be surprised now if he signs a new contract, to be honest. I think that this interest has got out there, that it has been clearly welcomed by the player in the case of Inter, maybe not so much as much with Tottenham, but definitely in the case of Inter. For me, shows where his head's at, which is maybe he wants to go and play more regularly elsewhere. Which, you think about some of the things he said is very, very surprising. And I just think it just pretty terrible for Liverpool. I mean, clearly the player is driving part of this. So, if you want to put blame anywhere, he's definitely part of it. It's not like he's being forced out by any means. But I also wonder, is there more Liverpool could do to keep hold of him? I mean, he's your only scouser you've got in the team now. You've developed him since the age of 7, 8, 9, whenever he did join the pre-academy. He's had those quotes out there about wanting to captain the club, etc. Although, maybe very similar to Trent in that's might be empty words or whatever. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure he seems the type. Is there not a world you can get to where you can give him a contract that he is happy with the role that he's got, which is, by the way, still playing an awful lot of games in the season, just to keep hold of him? I think it's important to have Scousers in your team, and I think I tell you what is important is having homegrown players as well, and club-trained players around your squad who are not just filling space, but are genuinely useful as well. So, I just don't think there's any justification for allowing this to happen, and I'm massively concerned now that this is where this is heading. It doesn't feel, with the player welcoming that interest, like he has got his head on, getting a contract signed and staying at Liverpool for longer. And Liverpool are probably going to have to make a decision on that in the next, 12 months or so. So, well, before that, I mean, possibly before this, when it gets to this summer, really. So, if he isn't going to sign one, so. Big worry, and I very rare that you see a turnaround from a situation like this. So I'm massively concerned, to be honest.
Yeah, it almost feels like, I mean, we've talked before about the names like Adam Wharton and others they've been linked with, and they're clearly looking for a midfielder reinforcement, but selling Curtis Jones to do it just doesn't feel like the right way forward. So
not least because you look at his form compared to McAllister this season, and if you're going to sell one of them, you sell the one who isn't homegrown, whose legs seem to have gone a little bit, who isn't a local lad as well. I just think, maybe it'd be nice to see Liverpool sign another midfielder and give themselves another option in there, but not at the expense of Curtis Jones. He's done so much work to get him to this point, and he's still so young as well. It's like he can be even better than this. I just think it would be a travesty, really, if he were to leave, to be honest.
But yeah, it does feel we're going to hear that going that way. We'll see if we get any positive developments, even with that concern. And it felt strange in a way, and it felt complicated. But Liverpool on Sunday got confirmed they were in talks with Sunderland and Red Bull Leipzig, it's fair to say, around Geertruida, currently, on Sunderland on loan from Red Bull Leipzig. And Liverpool, we know, like to revisit their homework. We know the connections Arne Slot's got with this player as well. But did this one just feel like too late, too complicated, left themselves too much today?
Yeah, I think they clearly thought they were in a position where they needed to get in a short-term defensive signing after the Frimpong injury. And I think you could just argue that they did leave it too late. I mean, the fact is they probably needed that before the Frimpong injury, because obviously, you knew Conor Bradley was going to be out. You know where Joe Gomez is up to, and how many times have we said on this podcast, it doesn't have to be a world-class signing made in this window, just a body you can play right back in centre half. And so when I heard these links, I was like, that'll do for me. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah. That's exactly what Liverpool need. It doesn't have to be coming in and tearing up any trees, but gives you a certain level of kind of reassurance if anything goes wrong in terms of injuries. But as you say, left it too late. Sunderland, weren't able to get a replacement, and so Liverpool are left with what they've got going forward, which is, I don't like to get ahead of it and judge it and say it's a disaster now, because it might not prove to be. but it leaves open the possibility of it proving to be a disaster. So let's see how these next couple of months play out and whether Liverpool do get stung by that. We hope not, but it feels more likely than if they had been able to get that deal over the line.
Yeah, it does feel like that they are gambling on this big time. And it was interesting. Jamie Carragher actually said, sort of at the start of the day, from the deadline day, Liverpool needs someone who can cover both centre back and right back. Sounds right. Van Dijk and Canate at first.
He's been listening to us.
Yeah, indeed. But as he put there, right now you don't want to end up in the situation of midfielder at centre back, and Szoboszlai's right back on Saturday as well. I mean, if this goes wrong with another injury or there's a lack of Champions League qualification because of defensive bodies, they have rightly left themselves open to massive criticism, haven't they?
Yeah, 100%. That's it. I think it's people probably need to keep the powder dry at this moment and say, because you can go over the top and make predictions that are going to, not come right at all. It's best to kind of wait and see what happens. But if they don't get there and the defensive injuries prove to be a key factor in that, then they will deserve every little bit of criticism they get, because that's how this works. It's kind of, you make decisions and we all get to judge it at the end and say how we think it kind of played out, really. So yeah, let's see how it goes. And it's interesting with Szoboszlai as well. Like, we spoke to him in the mix zone after the game, and my God, he does not want to be playing right back in even in the medium term. He said he was like nominating loads of others to have a crack at it. He really, he's saying like, oh, Watter can play there, Curtis Jones can play there. So he clearly doesn't fancy that in the long term himself.
Which, yeah, it's an interesting one, because you don't feel that'll help us secure the contract. And he's talked about this a little bit, and those comments came out from him on the Sunday as well with New Deal talks. From now on, it's not in my hands. There is no progression, but if the right offer comes, then let's see. Hopefully everyone will be happy at the end. I'm doing my job on the pitch. I love it here at Liverpool. I love the fans. I'm happy here. It's that bit about it's not in my hands. I suppose is there element to it becoming in his hands, such as more money somewhere in the leadership group and Champions League qualification. Do you think that's what we're talking about here?
Yeah, well, for me, the way I kind of took those comments is that his agents communicated what a deal or the outline of a deal would look like from his perspective. And now it's up for Liverpool to kind of come back to him and that negotiation to go forward. So I don't think it was kind of anything to worry about. He's only spoken about it because we had asked. So, and like I say, I think that it's very much, I don't think we're at a period yet where we need to kind of panic about this one. It's in the process of hopefully getting done, maybe not getting done, but it is in the process. And it's a back and forth now between the club and player, and we'll see what the outcome is.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. That doesn't feel like a quick resolution. What might even come before anything to do with Szoboszlai's contract? This story had I'm almost going to call it an air of inevitability when we're talking about it there. Ismail Mahmoud, well-known journalist, wrote that Mo Salah is a main target for the Saudi Pro League's recruitment for this summer. Al Ittihad are looking to sign him after Karim Benzema's departure. No contact yet. There's inevitability about these type of stories, it feels, though, isn't there?
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, it's just at the point now where it kind of makes sense for everyone if that's the way that this is going to play out. I mean, Liverpool would get a fee. Mo Salah gets to move on and go play more regularly in a league where he would be an absolute idol. And he himself, I think there is a bit of frustration with his comments and him lashing out before he went to AFCON, which is to do with the fact that he maybe accepts himself that he's not quite there now and he's not the same player that he was. It feels like way too harsh to say this about him, by the way, because I mean, he's been unbelievable down the years, but you can't avoid the aging thing that will come for all of us, and you suddenly do realize you're not quite as quick or not as reacting as quickly as you used to. And I think we've seen since he's come back from AFCON that is the case. I think it's now clear that kind of there is a drop off in performance level, unfortunately. So it just makes a lot of sense. And Saudi are always going to want him to come. I mean, I don't think that's a huge revelation that he's a big target for them. He has been for years. It's just whether he will give them the green light. But I'd say that looks more likely than it ever has, really.
It does feel that way. So we'll see if that one develops in the summer. And almost at the other end of the age scale completely. I've never really watched this kid, so I'm not going to pretend I can tell you that much about Josh Abe, but everyone can tell you almost he's the big star or the big potential, as it were, in Liverpool's academy. Everyone will tell you that he signed with Trent's brother as his agent, and everyone will also tell you that every other club or all the big players are interested in him, whether it's Chelsea getting revenge for Rio and Gamoa, City, whoever it is. Liverpool have got to fight to keep hold of this kid, haven't they?
Yeah, it's not helpful as well that Chelsea are pretty keen to get one over on them after the Ngamoa debacle, as they see it. So, if they were able to pinch someone of his standing, they would be pretty happy about that, which is a worry. One thing I wouldn't say is a massive part of it is Trent's brother being involved. He doesn't hate Liverpool, and it's not kind of internally is not seen in that way as anything to be overly concerned about from that sense. He's an agent who will look after his client and look if the pathway is there at Liverpool and the contract is there at Liverpool. That's the place to be. So that's what it's more about than, just because Trent left, his brother's going to want everybody to leave. I'm not sure it's going to work like that at all. But, that's not to say to not be concerned about this player's future, because there are a couple of clubs sniffing around him, and Liverpool are a little bit concerned about which way that's going to go. And it's, it's very difficult at youth level to stave them off as well. So until he kind of signs a deal, or they can lock him down in any way, it's just something for them to worry about, really.
Yeah, amongst many other things. And I suppose the final one I should ask as well, sort of transfer related or contract related more. Now that Jacquet's on his way, a lot of people have taken that of that's definitely a boo off then, but it was always leaning that way, really, wasn't it, anyway?
Yeah, the fact now that we are getting so close to the end and no real kind of breakthrough, and you're signing a defender who, albeit he plays in the back three, but he likes to play on the right hand side, and you're paying £60 million for him. It does all seem to be kind of pointing in that direction, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's interesting we haven't heard any links with other clubs. Obviously, Real Madrid not in for him. Maybe that PSG move would appeal if they're going to be making a push for him. That would probably be a really good one, but we haven't heard much about that. But yeah, it feels a little bit like the writing's on the wall now. I think there had been talks, as I understood it, over the last few months, but we're now just at a point where it's so late in the day and there hasn't been a breakthrough that you start to get sceptical about whether there ever will be. Liverpool have tried, and I think the player's been open to that, and they have spoken. There's been a back and forth over this. But it just doesn't seem to be there. And an interesting point in the comments there about kind of starting a 20-year-old. I mean, I do expect that, my expectation would be that Liverpool would sign another centre-half as well, and someone more experienced. That is still kind of in the plans. So I don't think it's going to be the case that, Jacquet should, in theory, get a lot of games next season when he comes in, and that's one of the things that appealed to him in terms of signing for Liverpool ahead of Chelsea. But they know that they need experience there as well if Canate goes. So it's not, he is the kind of future Canate replacement, but they need someone who's in the middle to kind of ease that and make it easier. And I personally, I just keep an eye on the Schlotterbeck stuff. Just his contract situation, the way he profiles. I know Liverpool have watched him, so that someone in that profile as well. I'm not saying it's going to definitely be him, but he'll be on the shortlist, I expect.
Yeah, you do feel another senior centre-half will be coming as well. There's another busy summer, like it or not, people, it seems. But something more immediate. I mean, this seems crazy that for all the talk we're having at the moment, this is a massive game, isn't it? Liverpool City, Super Sunday. It's huge in terms of the title race, but also it's huge in terms of Champions League. Is it almost, you can overbill these, but it feels like a must-win for both teams almost.
Yeah, I mean, if City don't win it, then they're probably out of the title race, aren't they? So, I mean, they're already really just kind of hanging on, and it's looking not great for them. And yeah, from Liverpool's perspective, they need to get top four, and so they can't afford to drop points themselves. So it's set up quite nicely, and kind of a different clash to what we've seen down the years in terms of. These have been kind of the two elite teams, haven't they, in the league? And so, it's been a really high quality, whereas they're struggling a bit more now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, it's a weaker City side than we've seen, so not as much to be feared, but of course, it's a weaker Liverpool side as well, so quite hard to pick out how it's gonna go, really.
It is, yeah. It will be almost which team plays to their full potential, possibly this one. And I was going to ask you about players because people will talk about Semenyo, of course, and the fact we were, people suggested we wanted him. What reception will Mark Gay get, do you think, at all?
I don't think anyone will be that bothered, will they? I don't know. It's not. My thing on him was pretty much like he's a very good player, but it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe that he missed out on this superstar to Manchester City. I just think he was, I thought Carragher's comments about how he made sense in the summer but didn't make sense in the January were quite interesting and insightful. And I kind of agreed with him, really. That, it's not like you absolutely go out and break the bank for this guy, and mess up your wage structure to get him in January. Because I think he's a very good player, but not like unbelievably elite as well. And I think it makes more sense for me always for Liverpool to sign centre halves that win aerial duels, to be honest. I'm quite big on that, and I think Liverpool should be big on that because it's important, really. So I don't think he'll get any kind of booing or anything like that. And I do know, and I always think this is interesting, he's gone to City and he hasn't single-handedly solved their defensive problems either. So all that talk that he had to sign for Liverpool, and Semenyo's gone there and he hasn't fixed the form either. It just shows you there's a lot more to football. Signings are important, recruitment, you have to get it right, but it's not always kind of a catch-all in terms of solving all your problems either.
Will be interesting because obviously City were dominating Spurs, but just collapsed second half, didn't they, to get a draw, and it could have ended worse. I mean, with the way we've been playing at the moment, and versus the 10 behind Ekitike, Gakpo left, Salah right, do you think he's going to change that with City in mind? Do you think he'll be reluctant to be that so open in the middle? Do you think we'll see three midfielders in there?
Yeah, I wonder whether he'll kind of go for the kind of box midfield, because I think City have played something quite similar at times recently. So maybe that's the way he'll go for it and kind of just match up with City and think, well, at the moment we're, it's Anfield, our players are now starting to come into form. They're struggling a little bit. Can we just match up for them and be the better team on the day? So maybe that's the way he'll go about it. Because I think you have to be more solid in midfield, because they will, even if they're not a great City side, they'll try and dominate in there. So and you saw actually in the the game at close to the start of the season when he went to the Etihad, City always seem to have an extra man in the middle. So I'm sure that's something Arne Slot will have watched and want to kind of guard against.
And I suppose we don't know, but fingers crossed in terms of injuries. It sounds like maybe Frimpong will be a little later, but real hope Joe Gomez will be available for this one.
Yeah, that's the expectation. So I'd be surprised if he's not in. So I think, I think he will be there, which is good. And I don't think he will maybe start the game, but I think, to have him as an option on the bench would be pretty helpful, wouldn't it? Mind you, thinking about when he's back, maybe he's had enough time to come in the short at right back. Maybe actually, that'll be interesting to see whether they do that actually. But yeah, it definitely helps, because even if he's just on the bench, he makes the bench look better, because it's not looked very good recently, to be honest.
Nah, it has looked short. And I suppose with these games, I mean, we've talked about an easier run recently, but you think Newcastle had a bit of a go and got beat 4-1. Karabak's obviously an outlier in that regard, but could this game just suit us more? Because they're going to come and play football, which they don't really have our kryptonite of set pieces, long balls, and that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably good news for Liverpool, because they cope better with those types of games. And it's interesting, City kind of just out footballed them in the first game, really. So Liverpool, we're hoping that they're a bit better at kind of coping with that now, and can, they're a bit more of a solid team. And Liverpool have started to show some good things recently as well. So yeah, fingers crossed, and it'll be a game that suits them. And we'll feel like, even if City are kind of struggling at the moment, it'll feel like a big win if Liverpool can get it.
And it will feel like a huge win. And I won't say a complete turnaround for Arne Slot, because that would be too much. But it just felt almost marked this week, the mood music, almost that people may, I'm not saying realise is maybe too strong, but start to get on board with whatever they think, whether slot in, slot out, he's going to be here till the end of the season. The club seemed pretty entrenched on that, was the mood music. That's been the feeling, to almost that just get behind him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with someone last week, I think it was last Monday, where they were kind of saying, like, it's so much calmer at the training ground than you would think when you see all the kind of storm outside and all the talk about it. And he said that, you know, I don't get the impression that there's any keenness to dispatch with the manager. That's not to say that might not happen come the summer, by the way, because look, if the next 3-4 months are bad and the results and the performances are bad, they will definitely have a look at it. But they clearly don't want to appoint an interim, and they believe that Arne Slot can get to his aims for this season and that he's capable of turning it around. So that they are really strongly backing him at the moment. And as you say, it doesn't matter where you stand on it. You might as well just, particularly supporters, I think, might as well just get behind the manager because he's going to be there. So, you know, you might as well kind of try and help him to get top four, even if you think he's absolutely useless, which I know some people do. So, yeah. That's the kind of state of play at the moment. For me, you know, it's probably the sensible move, isn't it, to kind of just see how this pans out, to back a league-winning manager and see where you end up. And, you know, hopefully there's more performances like the Newcastle one to come over the remainder of the season. And if that's the case, then he gives himself every chance of being in the job next season. You know, I don't think it's as cut and dry as the backing him. No matter what happens, he'll be there next season. It's definitely not, because you can't, you know, you can only lose so many games. You can only play poorly so many times before the pressure starts to tell and they start to say, well, you know, what are we doing here? But if you can see more of those Newcastle type performances, more Carabags, then, you know, they'll get to the end of the season, they'll put it all together and say, well, you know, if he got us top four, he did it in a way where the football started to become encouraging. He dealt with all these mitigating factors. Then they will make the argument for him to stay. But big few months coming up, really.
Yeah, it does still feel all on the table. And one story we've got to talk about, I know you'll have seen this today, the round table, where naturally Arne Slot is joined by Billy Hogan and by Richard Hughes. Funnily enough, we were talking about Richard Hughes coming out and speaking in the recent future as well. What did you make of the round table premise and what was said?
Yeah, I quite liked it. I watched it today and I thought it was a few interesting points in there. I thought it was, albeit it was club managed and they were able to manage the messaging in it. I thought there were a few interesting things in there, but it was just good to see Richard Hughes talking publicly, because I think, you know, you can't just leave all the pressure on your manager. And a lot of the things he was saying about kind of strategy and long-term thinking and stuff, it kind of takes some of the pressure away from the manager. So I liked that, and I think they deserve praise. And there were a few interesting lines in there as well in terms of, you know, how they're approaching things, what their relationship's like. But arguably the most interesting thing of all is that it was published in the first place, because, you know, I think you can very much read too much into kind of what the digital media department at the club, and I used to work there, so I know this, what they as a wider department know about what's going on at the club, because it's very separate to the football staff. They're based at Chapel Street. They're not based at the AXA. So you're not going to get a hint about a signing coming in a tweet posted, unless it's specifically that's the aim and it's the build up to the announcement or whatever. Because these people won't know. So you can't go, oh, well, they published this and this means this and that and the other. But I actually think in this case there is a hint there, because the fact is, you know, if Richard Hughes and Billy Hogan were kind of, well, he's not going to be the manager, this puts us in a really difficult position because we've kind of already made our mind up, they wouldn't have got involved in that. And they have the power to just turn around to the digital media department, say, we're not going to do this. We don't think it's right to do this at the moment.
Yeah.
And it would have been quietly, you know, put away. And even after filming it, they could have done the same and say, don't put that out. We don't think it's the right time to do it. But they didn't. They got involved. They did it. And it's, you know, in that sense, I think you can take it as a bit of a show of support for the manager, because they're showing that the relationships are strong. They're putting on this public face, and, you know, they could have, it's so easy to just not do that. So I do think there was some significance to that. Like I say, you know, you can read too much into that stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But in this case, I actually think it is worth reading into. It does say something about where they stand with the manager and the belief they have that he can turn this round.
Yeah, it did feel that way. Powerful visual image anyway. And there's just a few comments or quotes from it that I wanted just to talk about there. Billy Hogan talked about winning trophies, making our supporters happy and proud, and here to win, but sustainability and responsibility. Talked about the parade. Funny enough, winning the league twice in 5 years means more than twice in 30. And I noticed Arne Slot had a little bit of a giggle when he said that at the same time, because 2 in 5, 2 in 30. But the thing I thought about that was that all sounds great, Billy Hogan. That's completely correct. But we've almost mentioned this before. Why is it always boom or freaking bust with FSG? Why was it always rich or poor seasons? It's never just once, twice in 5 years is great. Let's keep that.
Yeah, and the thing is with the FSG stuff is my kind of view on this is very much if City get found to be guilty, and even if they don't, to be honest, because we all know what's gone on there and what they spent, and the sums of money that they put into the whole thing, that made it, even if there was no cheating proven by the Premier League, it was kind of Liverpool were up against it. If Liverpool had got over the line in a couple more of those, if they'd have won one more of the Champions League finals that they were in than the defeats that they've had, I think this FSG era would be looked at completely differently. And we are talking about boom bust, but we would probably be just saying, well, this is the natural cycle of a big football club. These things can happen. You will occasionally have down seasons, but look at what they've won. Look at how incredible that is. Unfortunately, they missed out on the league by a point twice. They did get a couple of defeats in Champions League finals, and you're kind of like, well, they're making all these smart decisions, but it's not that smart. It's not give us this amount of trophies, but you've got to think that they've been a little bit unlucky, to be honest, in that, and that it could have completely changed perceptions and changed perceptions of every decision they've ever made, really, by getting one more point in the league twice in a season, and Vincent Kompany maybe getting sent off in the Etihad game. Rodri getting a penalty given against him at Goodison Park. The entire seasons could have been exactly the same, but those little small issues, and I'm not talking about refs here. I'm just talking about little moments that could have gone, a bounce of a ball or whatever. And the FSG era is seen as like undeniably a golden era, whereas I would say it is anyway, because Liverpool have been in those positions regardless. So, I can't ever come round to a position where I don't think they've run the football side of things incredibly well, to be honest. They've not always been absolutely perfect, but they still quite clearly are the smartest club in the division for me, in terms of the decision making. I just really truly believe that, even in this season that's not been very good, I still think that they generally make good decisions on the whole as a sporting organisation. And so I'm very sympathetic to Billy Hogan's views on that, I have to say.
Fair enough. It's a fair argument. And the other side, the other character at the table, Richard Hughes, who I kind of, he has almost a Bond villain style look to me for me, the way he does it. But there's just a bit of a flash of steel in the way he spoke, I thought, as well, because he said, I like this. He talks about that's Arne Slot's domain, the football decisions. So it's this bit. I don't think naturally within a conversation I will come up with opinion, but you have to have an opinion. You can't shy away from that. And it's that you can't shy away from that. They won't shy away from making a decision this summer if they think it's the right thing to do, will they?
No, absolutely not. And this is the crucial thing, is like, as much as kind of they may want to back him, and that's exactly what they're doing at the moment, it will come to the summer and they will just have two sets of underlying numbers in front of them, profiles of other managers, and they will say, okay, Luis Enrique might be available this summer, Xabi Alonso is available this summer. This is what we know about Arne Slot. This is what he's done at Liverpool. This is what the underlying numbers look like. This is what Xabi Alonso has done so far. This is what Luis Enrique has done so far. Which of these three is the better manager? And it'll have nothing to do with the fact that this is the one that's contracted to us. It will be like, who do we think it will be a better manager if given these tools? And they will make a kind of cold business decision on that. So, because that's absolutely how they operate. So it's fascinating. That's why I keep talking about these next few months are so important and so interesting. Because if Slot can kind of put together a consistent run now of like good underlying performance and decent results and get in the top four, can really kind of change how he comes into that conversation. If not, it just makes the decision easier for them. But like I say, and like Richard Hughes said, he won't shy away from making it and having an opinion, and he will have his thoughts at the moment as well. So it's a really interesting time, I think.
Yeah, it does just feel like everything is on the table at the moment. But 3 senior members of the club, 3 points against Newcastle. Let us see what Sunday, City at home, a huge game brings. All it leaves me to say, as ever, for the time, the insight, and for answering all the questions, David, it is massively appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.